Hello, this is the NICU Lived Network, and we are your hosts. I'm Melinda.
I'm Nat.
And I'm Emma. We are all NICU mothers using our lived experience to partner with health professionals to impact research, advocacy, and clinical practice.
Each week we will bring you something new. It could be a topic highlight, the latest in research, a visit to a NICU, or ways in which you can use your lived experience within the NICU to impact change. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, hello, and thank you for joining us on this episode of the NICU Lived Network. You're here with Mel and Nat. Hi, everyone. And we have a really special guest with us today, Jodi Klaristenfeld. Did I say that correctly?
You did. You said it perfectly.
We were practicing that just before we started. Who is the founder of FLRRiSH. Jodi's the mum to a beautiful, adorable little girl who was born at 28 weeks due to a really rare and life-threatening condition, which I know many of you out there, I know people who have personally had preeclampsia, and then it develops into a form of HELLP syndrome. After her daughter's early birth, Jodi quickly discovered that mums and dads of babies that are born early aren't always given the support they need, and Nat and I know that very well. And as a result, she created FLRRiSH, which is a platform that offers NICU parent education, empowerment, support, and resources to help families navigate this beautiful and challenging journey of what is the NICU and having babies born so early. So Jodi comes to us from her home in New York. So welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start with maybe you talking to us a little bit about your journey, your experience, and what you went through with having your beautiful little girl.
Well, as you just mentioned, I had preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. I did not know any of that until after my daughter was born. She was 28 and 4. I had the easiest 28 weeks, and then the last 4 days, I was just so sick that I didn't realize how sick I was. I went into my OB's office at 12:30 in the afternoon. My daughter was born at 3:16.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. So you didn't even know in the lead up that anything was wrong?
No, my doctor, took my blood pressure, which was insanely high, around like 190 over 160.
Yeah.
And he took a look at the baby, unbeknownst to me that the placenta was separating from the uterine wall. And he's like, okay, we're going to go to the hospital. Everything's great. He's like, my sonogram machine isn't working so well. I want to check just to make sure that everything's okay. But I think we're going to stay in the hospital until you have this baby. And looking confused, not even scared. I was confused. I said, I don't understand. The baby's not due for another 3 months. How am I possibly going into the hospital and not leaving until she arrives? And my OB happens to also be my mom's OB. And so he's like, why don't we call your mom in here and, just have a little discussion. So, okay. And he's looking at my mom talking very slowly and deliberately, like he's trying to send my mother a message in some way. And he's like, now, Linda, you and Jodi are going to go to the hospital and you're going to tell them I'll be there. I'm going to, a few minutes thereafter, and this is what's going to happen. And he seemed very calm to me, and he really was the picture of calm, which was wonderful. And my mom was like, okay, and literally stepped outside of his office, got to the hospital at 1:00. And, it didn't hit me until actually about 1.5 years after my daughter's birth that I never waited for an elevator. I didn't have to check in at the hospital, like nothing. All my mom did was say, hi, Jodi Klaristenfeld here for, I can't even say my own name. Jodi Klaristenfeld here, Dr. Romoff. They're like, just go. Literally, the elevator was waiting. But I didn't realize any of that until, like I said, a year and a half later.
So you didn't know at this stage that you were about to deliver?
No, I didn't know. They gave me a shot right away in my belly, and a doctor, a neonatologist who I came to love over the course of our 77-day stay, said to me and my mom, and now my husband wasn't there because he was in Europe for work. We weren't expecting this, so
He was to go, yeah.
And so he asked me, he goes, well, what is your birth plan exactly? And I looked at him, and again, I was out of it, but not fully understanding everything. And I said, well, I'm taking a birthing class in 2 weeks, and I'm going to tour the hospital. And then my mom just looks at him and goes, not this. Right?
Thank goodness for moms.
Right. And then literally, like soon thereafter, I remember seeing my doctor in the OR, and he's like, Jodi, everything's going to be great. We're going to get your baby girl out, and everything's going to be great. And I'm just like, okay. And the next thing I know, really, it's about almost like 2.5 days later, and I'm meeting my daughter for the first time. I remember bits and pieces.
Did you say 2 days?
Yes.
Oh, Jodi.
I was hallucinating from
Being
the
so
magnesium.
Yeah.
And, my husband, who has 3 sons from his first marriage, his middle son came to visit. I didn't even know who he was. I was in like this other place, I guess. And I didn't even know if I asked for my daughter, which I feel so awful about. I still don't know that. And I don't think that I did. But I was just going through so much, again, that I wasn't even aware of at the time. But I felt like that made me a bad mother because I couldn't remember. And I didn't know what had happened.
So for anyone that doesn't know what preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome is, are you able to explain that?
Yes. Preeclampsia basically is a condition when your blood pressure gets really high. And generally, the only way to, I guess, remedy that, aside from medication, the most important thing is to get the baby out as soon as possible.
Oh, okay.
So, and that starts to help lower the blood pressure initially. HELLP syndrome.
It can be life-threatening to both of you, can't it?
Yeah. Oh, yes. My OB actually said to my mom that he was hoping to get a few hours or maybe a day. And he actually was, I guess, looking at my vitals or what have you. And he said to my mom, I have to take the baby now or else we are going to lose them both.
Wow.
And then he asked my mom if I have to choose. Right? I mean, I said to my mom, I go, how did your jaw not drop to the floor? She's like, she goes, it could have. I don't know. She goes, I just looked in such shock. Whoever expects to hear that.
Yeah.
And then HELLP syndrome can be even more deadly than preeclampsia. So my liver enzymes were all out of whack. I had protein in my urine. My urine had started to turn orange. I started to see double. And I literally felt like I couldn't breathe. And also my platelets were so low because I was bleeding that wouldn't stop for about 3 days.
Yeah.
So all these were signs of something really wrong, except it was my first pregnancy. And prior to that moment, I hadn't gained much weight. I'd gained like 6.5, 7 pounds in the first few weeks. And then I gained 23 pounds in those 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And it was all water weight.
Yeah.
But I thought that it was the pregnancy kind of catching up with me because people are usually bigger.
Yeah.
I thought the bloody nose is explained by, you know what, it was cold. It was January in New York. Heaters can cause people to get dry, and your blood vessels are stretching even more so in your third trimester. So I thought that was from that. And, it was once I started to see double the morning my daughter was born that I called my OB's office. Thankfully, someone was watching over us.
Oh, that's so scary. And I'm curious, Jodi, when you, from the moment you walked into the hospital, did you know that you were going to have an operation? Like, how soon before you realized, or did someone say to you, "Hi, we're going to operate on you now"? And then
I don't remember. I just remember going up to the labor and delivery floor and talking to, say, Dr. E, the neonatologist, and then seeing the anesthesiologist and my OB in the OR. And I don't remember really anything else. I except my doctor saying, "We're going to get your baby out. Everything is going to be great. Don't worry." And I believed him. He was the picture of calm. And that's really what you want, especially in such a life-threatening situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long was that journey in hospital with your little girl?
Well, I was in the hospital myself for 10 days.
Wow.
And my daughter was in the hospital for 77 days. She came home 3 days before her due date. So,
what's her name? I don't think we had her name in there.
Her name is Jenna, and her middle name is Faith. And it's so interesting is that we had the name picked out like months before because we knew the letters that we were going to use. A J for my husband's father and an F for my grandmother. Yeah. And so we knew the name, but it actually, the middle name, Faith, took on a whole new meaning. Absolutely. Just with how she came into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So from that journey, so let's kind of, I guess, fast forward to what you're doing now with FLRRiSH. How did all that come about?
I figured out, I want to say that I felt that so strongly that I wanted to give back to people who helped save our lives. I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. And I also knew that I needed to be far enough out of that part of our lives in order to be able to look back with clarity and be able to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. I realized pretty early on that, we weren't supported and we had nowhere to turn to talk to or even process things. And like I said, my OB was amazing. My husband was an amazing support, but he was hurting just the same. And then while I was experiencing my daughter's growth and development through early intervention, which the system here in the United States, while wonderful because there are services that are provided for free, it is also something that moves at such a slow snail's pace. And those moments are pivotal in growth and development for children. And I educated myself on how I could help her. And so I kind of cultivated my own team for her while we were also trying to get early intervention up and running. And I realized how fortunate that I was to be able to, I guess, put that hat on while I was also dealing with the trauma of what had happened. And I wanted to be able to somehow help others on their journey, those that would come after me, and not be so lost and not feel so isolated and not feel so alone or confused.
I'm nodding because it's almost my story to a T. So my second son, Dylan, was born at 27 weeks. He spent 9 weeks in the NICU before we were able to bring him home. And the same, had some support for the first 12 months in terms of early intervention and developmental help. And then our system here dropped off. So you were thrown into a big world. And in the parent support, like the emotional space, I have Italian background, big family, but first person to have a pram. So even though I had people around me, no one understood what we were going through and what the journey was like. So yeah, exactly the same way I craved being connected to other mothers and families who had gone through something similar, but also wanted to look at how do we support families long term. So yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing how we can be on opposite sides of the world, go through a similar experience, but that need is exactly the same.
I think though that's the human spirit, right? Is to crave community or conversation or camaraderie in some respect. And I think with this, it's something that's so personal and something that you're kind of generally thrown into and you don't really think about until it happens. And then if you don't know anyone who you can talk to, where are you supposed to go to let out your emotion and your thoughts and your feelings on top of trying to heal from birth, on top of trying to navigate essentially being almost a medical parent, at least at first, and then trying to figure out what your parenthood journey is going to look like, because it's not going to be the typical story. And I wanted some place that I could go to, that I could look to for a positive story, something that I could cling on to, some hope. And I couldn't find any of that. And in that, I also realized with the amount of premature births per year in the United States, I don't know how many are where you guys are, but in the United States, 10.5% of births per year are
We're
premature.
about the 10% as well.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah.
That's a lot of parents who are confused and overwhelmed and don't know how to get themselves help or their children help. And the children are the future of the world.
Exactly. And is that just based in New York where you are, or is that across the country?
No, it's across the country, with Zoom and
virtual technology.
Right? You and I are talking right now, and we're across the world. So it has really made it so that you could touch so many people. And if I was working with someone in a place that I don't necessarily know all their resources and what's available, I'll do my research to get those parents the information that they need.
And do you work, what's the reception with, healthcare providers, whether it's the NICUs or the allied health support that you get? Is there a partnership that you're able to form?
Well, I'm in the process of doing that now, in terms of getting that partnership with various hospitals, at first on the more local level, because at least I can go in myself and talk to people face to face. I have had interest in other states, which is wonderful because people are starting to find out about FLRRiSH, and that's really what it's all about, to spread the word, to get parents help. So I am actively working on that, to even just do focus groups amongst current NICU families while they're in the NICU, just to talk to them about their mental health, which gets so put by the wayside. Self-care, our own needs just fall to the bottom.
I think that's one of the things that we've noticed, even over the last couple of decades. So my kids are approaching 20 now. So, but just realizing that from a NICU perspective, they do want to better support the parents' journey. It's just looking at ways how to do that. And obviously, yes, the care of the baby is priority. But if you don't look after the emotional well-being of the family that you're going to send these babies home to, it's not a complete job. It really needs to be looked at like the whole family unit. So I think it's absolutely wonderful what you're doing, because they need that gap filled. They need to be able to support the parents as they go through it.
You know, I've spoken to some moms who aren't as quite far out of the NICU as you are, but in their teenage years, and they still have trauma. And I think the thing is that, right? I don't think it ever leaves you. It's more about the experience. I don't see how it can't change who you are as a person. And it's learning how to manage that. And maybe I call it mastering your mindset as a NICU parent, right? It's how to just alter your thinking upon certain things, especially when it comes to education and, I'll say, stigma from people that are around you if your child doesn't fit inside the box. And also how to, I think it's important that, you know, self-care during these times is so pivotal, and we let it, myself included, let it fall by the wayside. But if you show up for yourself, you're that much better for your children and for your family. And if you can help people realize that, or help them understand that going out for lunch with a friend or meeting someone for coffee does not make them a bad parent and is not selfish, that goes a long way.
Yeah, it really resonated to me what you said about feeling like a bad parent, because I know I was in labour for 4 days before I had Dylan, and after he was delivered and then taken, I remember not asking once, how was he? Like, I didn't even know at that point had he survived or anything, but I was just that exhausted. But it's something that's really, like, all these years I still think about the fact, because with my first son, as soon as he was born, he was at 34 weeks. I couldn't stop asking, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? And the doctor said to me, if you stop talking, you'll hear that he's crying. But I didn't do that. Yeah, like that shock, you know, like the things that you hang on to is amazing. It's those little things that you don't talk about but can affect you long term. I still think about it.
And I think, you know, in these groups that I do, it's really amazing the sense of community that strangers have with each other, because it's an experience that few can empathize with and few have been there. And there's this unspoken bond between NICU parents, I feel, that is there, regardless of where you live, how old your kids are, how old the parents are, how long your child was in the NICU. It's just this bond of, just by virtue of having your child in this place that, you know, is not, even if it is expected, and you're like having twins, I don't think anything could fully prepare you to seeing your child laying in an isolate with tubes and an apparatus over their face. I don't think anything can fully prepare you for that. So just by this shared experience, there's this unique bond. And I think that's really important. I think it allows people to get out a lot of emotion and a lot of feeling that maybe was just pushed all the way down without even realizing it. And also, I think it just helps people deal with even moving forward in their lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, and similar to you, I didn't ask about my daughter. I'm almost certain I didn't.
Mm.
And like I said, that made me feel awful. Like I was the worst mom ever. And I think society paints one picture and glorifies all labor and delivery, and very few are seamless.
So the reason that we set up this network is really because we wanted to be able to expose the fantastic work that happens out there, particularly ones that do work within, partnerships between health professionals and parents and fit into, I guess, the realms of research, advocacy, and improving clinical practice. So I think what you're doing, being such an amazing advocate for families, is absolutely fantastic. I remember I was asked 2016, I was at a conference, and a doctor, he was an obstetrician, not a neonatologist, had said to me, "Why you?" And just as you was talking, like I was actually thinking about that with you, Jade, like, why you? There's a lot of parents that, go through the journey, and then not that you completely move on with your life, but you don't come back to then say, okay, I want to change the experience for future families. What is it about you? I'm curious.
I just feel my daughter was born this way so that I could help others.
Mm.
I choose to look at it as a glass half full as opposed to half empty. And I'm so appreciative of the help we've gotten along the way. And how do you say thank you? And also, again, I wanted to create something that was missing from my own journey, so that other people don't feel the way I felt, and in some respects still do feel. I think, life is hard enough as it is. And if you can find your tribe, it's really, really important, and it's a really wonderful thing. And I also want to note that while being a preemie parent is challenging, it's also so rewarding. I really did a reset in my life, and I celebrate every little win, every little everything. And I don't know if I would have done that had Jenna not been born this way. I only know how I am now. And I love the fact that she's so happy, and she also cheers her friends on. And she's like, "Go, Olivia, go," or "Great job, Olivia, yay." I mean, and I feel that she gets that from all of us around her, because we're constantly championing her and her accomplishments. And to watch that is so rewarding and wonderful. And I just want people to enjoy being a parent, even if their parenthood journey gets off to a rough start. I think it's still so wonderful.
And I'm curious, Jodi, when you were in the hospital, was there no offer of peer-to-peer support or someone that checked in with you, or a social worker, or because
there was a social worker. And she asked me about like postpartum depression and about how I was healing from my C-section. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, I had a C-section. Like, that's the least of there's so many other things going on in my head and I think I didn't have postpartum depression, but there's just so much going on when you don't even know why your baby was born or what's going on with you. And I was very fortunate. My OB was just like, hold the phone. You're a great mother. You're asking questions. I already know you're a great mother. Just because you didn't ask for her 2 days ago, you don't even know what you've been through in the last, right? And he's like, take a moment for yourself. And he goes, we're not going to discuss it now. He's like, but we'll discuss what you've been through. And then you'll see that everything you did is amazing. And that was how I was able to start to unfold, getting, help for myself. I mean, I was fragile for a while, but, I didn't find that the social worker in the hospital was helpful to me. And I think maybe in my 10 days that I was in the hospital, I saw her twice.
Yeah.
And then on occasion when I was in the NICU, but just hi.
There was no, other parents that maybe the extent would have been other parents that you might have met in the NICU or something like
that. We have some really good friends that we met in the NICU. And it's one of those things, right? You share experiences with, but on a professional level or peer-to-peer, there was nothing in my hospital.
Yeah. Are you finding that that's changing at all, or people more receptive to the need or the really?
For peer support, I think still. I mean, I live in New York, and now I think hospitals may be a little less restricted, but because of COVID, they were letting no one in anywhere. I mean, New York was like, we were hit really hard. So, but that's why I'm saying now I'm starting to make some inroads into doing that, because something has to be said for peer-to-peer support. And it's not like I say to people, I'm not taking away someone's job. I'm not, this is just an addition. This is like a bonus, like an add-on. And, coming to them with data and facts about how to help parents. And it just, it's a slow boat, but it's about like getting people to take a chance, right, on something that's unorthodox, right? Because peer support generally, like, well, why do we need that? We have doctors. So, but I'm hopeful that it will be more well received.
No, it's amazing. Really, stick at it.
It's really interesting because I know here, because there's peer-to-peer support here at the hospital here, and I used to do it, and I will do it in the holidays. But it's so it's called for. It's asked for by the staff members. They're like, oh, when are you back? When are you coming back? And it's so well it's really interesting the difference there. Like, they recognize the value, and they're the ones actually saying, when are you coming back, or is there going to be someone else coming to do that work? And I see on the meeting agenda items that about support for families. Like, it's really interesting, that difference.
I think as mental health becomes more of an issue, or more of
like a focus.
Yes. That especially in this country, it has become more of a focus, that I think that parents will start to be able to get more help. It's just amazing to me that after all these years, there's still this chunk of population that is so not cared for. And I get it that the babies, right, to your point, like, the babies first and foremost need to be taken care of first. But the parents also have gone through their own trauma too, and they have to be able to function and know what their journey is at least going to start to look like. So I completely.
Yeah, I to your point with the social workers, so when I had my boys, there was very much there's my microphone, my new fancy microphone. There was definitely like a culture within the unit that everyone was separated. So you didn't ask about another baby. You didn't kind of inquire, there was patient confidentiality, and, everyone kept to themselves. But that a desire, I guess, or that need for parents to want to speak to someone else was really strong. And I was asked, this was once I was out and forming support and things like that, to speak at a social worker conference. And I was in the back, so I wasn't actually participating, but I was listening to part of their discussion about, how do you better support? And I was like, can I answer that question? I was like, let parents talk to other parents. Like, let them have, and there is no problem with the social worker being able to facilitate peer-to-peer support groups.
Yeah.
Because you do need to look after both, like both sides of who's doing the support as well. So, we looked at having programs where past parents or parents who had already, graduated, their babies were out of the NICU, coming back to speak to current ones. Because I had questions, like when they were talking to me about Dylan's lungs, I was like, well, what does our life look like? Can I speak to someone who's got a 7-weeker at 2 years old, 5 years old? What's happening? Not being able to have that contact with anyone, or and that's what we helped develop. But still needing the social workers, because there's so many. You need to protect the parents who are currently in the unit. You need to protect the ones that aren't, or that have already are on the other side. And there's so many issues, like if a parent was suffering from depression or at risk of harming themselves or things like that, that goes beyond what a peer-to-peer might be able to do. So like it's really working together and being able to have the social worker support and facilitate peer-to-peer support. That's something I think that's really important to try and get across to them, to how can we better help. And like Nat said, once they start seeing it in action, there's no threatening to anybody's job. It's when are you coming? Because we can see the value in it.
Right. That's what I try to explain. Like, I'm not, I don't want to take anyone's job. I want to add something to help parents, and perhaps even free up some time for the social workers, because if I could help in respects of from a peer-to-peer standpoint, they can focus elsewhere, right? Like, that's what I say. So, it's like I said, we're in our infancy stages, and I'm really, really working hard to do that. I am very, very passionate about this. And I think when you come from a parent perspective as opposed to a clinical perspective, there's something very different. Whether it's the empathy piece, or you're just talking on a more human level and not in terms of acronyms or terminology that the layperson can't understand. I think that when you come from a position of having been in that person's shoes, just by that nature, you are an expert.
Absolutely. And I think more and more as time goes on, there is so much value in the lived experience and how it helps improve and shape healthcare and a parent's experience. So that's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of red tape, obviously. And like I said, they're lofty goals, but I'm just getting started. So, and I'm the kind of person that doesn't really take no too easily. So,
Well, thank you so much for being such a wonderful advocate and champion for families. Where can people find you, Jodi?
People can find me online, www.FLRRiSH.com, and that's spelled FLRRISH.
We'll put all the links and everything.
And they can email me hello@flourish.com, and just help spread the word, because there are plenty of parents out there like us that need support and a little extra love.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode and sharing the wonderful work you're doing. I hope that we keep in touch, and as you continue to grow, come back and tell us what's happening.
Oh, most certainly. I definitely will. And thank you so much for having me on, and for the work that you do and sharing experiences and stories. I think it's really important that other families out there get to hear about other stories and other people
Yeah.
through their lived experience.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happened with Nat and I. We were sitting with Emma in a conference, and one that we've been part of for years, and had a seat at the table, and realized that parents didn't get to see any of the things that we were getting to see. So that was where the whole concept of this came about, to be able to share that. So yeah, it's amazing for us too. And we're in our infancy and we're growing as well. So it's good.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sorry.
So I just like, there's always so much power in the sharing of peer-to-peer stories. I think there's and that a lot of healing as well, I think, in that when you hear other people's stories, go, oh, it wasn't just me, or oh yeah.
Yes, it's like that validation that you need, right? So, and yes, well, I would love to keep in touch with you ladies and just share more as time goes on.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on another episode of the NICU Live Network. Thanks for joining us today. To stay connected, please make sure you're following us on social media.
And if you found value in this episode, please share, like, or comment.
We'll see you on the next episode.